Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners, to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. It is a Thursday edition of the show, our third of the week. Of course, our fourth one will be coming up this Sunday, which we'll talk about a little bit later. We got a lot to get into as we further break down Bucs versus Lions. And really, the big topic that we have to get into on today's show is that the injury bug has struck the Bucs early. At first, we just thought it was the defense, but now there are some issues on the offense as well that we will talk about and see how the Bucs can overcome some of these obstacles going into a huge matchup against the Detroit Lions as they try to exercise some demons after falling to them twice last year. We'll see how it looks this time around this season. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is my fellow colleague from pewterreport.com, Adam Slavan. Adam, another busy day at the Bucs facility. How you doing?
Matt, it was, and I'm doing great, thank you. I heard from Liam Coen today, Larry Foote. Also got to talk to some of the players, Tristan Wirfs. Funderburk was also another one. So a lot of good stuff to get into. And then you mentioned the injuries, and that bug, it really has bitten them.
It has. Seems like a gigantic bug at this point. Shout out to Shaggy, a Pewter Report YouTube channel member that says, "What's good, Pewter people?" Appreciate everybody that's filing into the comments at the moment. But yeah, let's talk about the most recent injury with the Buccaneers. This kind of showed up on the injury report yesterday, and we probably will be getting the injury report very, very soon so we can break down the new injury report as well. But Luke the lifter, was an addition to the practice squad. He was limited in practice yesterday with a concussion, but the concussion protocol and everything is it's so interesting. It's all over the place. It's like, all right, well, he could practice. Now all of a sudden he has a concussion, but we also can't talk to a player that's in concussion protocol. We saw that with Zion McCollum. But Adam, today at practice, we did not see Luke Goedeke at all. So unfortunately, looks like he's trending in the wrong direction.
It does, and it looks like Justin School is out there in his place. Liam Coen kind of talked about today. If Luke Goedeke is unable to go, does the game plan change at all? And he said they have to prepare for the Lions pass rushers no matter what. They have Aiden Hutchinson, Marcus Davenport, and those players are going to be out there regardless if Luke or School is the right tackle. But going from Goedeke to School, it's quite a downgrade. And for an offense that really needs to keep up with the Lions team that, Matt, they've been like contending last year. They went 12-5 this year with Ben Johnson still calling the plays. All their playmakers, Gibbs, Montgomery, they're going to put up a lot of points. And the Bucs are going into a home environment where they need to keep up. So not having Goedeke there, it affects the run game. It affects the pass game. Going up against Aiden Hutchinson, arguably one of the best edge rushers in the game of football, it's a big concern heading into Sunday.
Yeah, I think that's one of the major issues specifically is the fact that this makes for a great opportunity for Aiden Hutchinson specifically, as Joel L. Regan says, "What's up, Pewter people? How you doing, Joel? Thanks for joining the show." Because Hutchinson showed he's shown already in his career how good of a player that he is, but he got off to the races quite well in that game against the Rams on Sunday Night Football. Now we're looking at a situation where if it's no Luke Goedeke, I think Justin School is a solid to okay backup offensive tackle, but we're talking about one of the best pass rushers in all of football. I have the same concerns with Aiden Hutchinson going up against Justin School as I would if he was playing against TJ Watt or Myles Garrett or, the Bosas or Max Crosby. There's some really, really talented edge rushers across the league, and I put Aiden Hutchinson in that category. So really the big question is, how do the Bucs counteract that if Schoolie, as Tristan Wirfs likes to call him, and a lot of the other offensive line, how do they counteract that? Well, Liam Coen kind of mentioned today, he said it without saying it, that there's going to be a ton of chip blocks and things of that nature. The tight end getting involved, trying to double team Aiden Hutchinson or at least knock him off his block just a little bit. So we might even see some more tight end formations this time around, whether it's 2 tight ends or the traditional 1 tight end that Liam Coen likes to have, but maybe keeping Cade Otton in a little bit more, because they can't allow, and Liam Coen said this too, like they can't go into this game and think about it after like, oh, we allowed Aiden Hutchinson to take over, because that will, as great as the Bucs were last week, that will immediately stop them in their tracks.
And another question with that, if Goedeke isn't able to go and it's school, does that, like Coen said, it doesn't change the game plan, but you have to think it would affect it like a little bit, right? Like you mentioned, like having a tight end there.
It has to alter it. It's got to alter it for sure.
But does that change the pass game into where Baker Mayfield, he may not have the time to throw like he did last week going up against the Commanders? I mean, the Lions secondary is a massive upgrade over the Commanders. When you look at their guys like Herbie Joseph, Brian Branch, Carlton Davis, obviously. But does Mike Evans, are they able to connect on deep shots like they were? How does Chris Godwin stay involved? Is it going to be a lot of short passes as opposed to medium and longer routes? I think that's an aspect to consider as well. And going off of that, when you look at the run game, they had the most success running on the right side last week. They had 13 runs over to Goedeke's way. You see this run here with Bucky Irving when he went along the right side. It will affect and it will alter the game plan.
No question about it. And, to bring it back to Mike, the beauty of Mike Evans is like, he's not just a deep threat down the field. Like he can run several different route trees. He can get himself open in one way or another. But where I think this has the biggest impact is that man right there, Rod Christopher Godwin. Because we saw from that Sunday night game between the Rams and the Lions, and the injury report just came out, and we'll get into it after this. We saw that Cooper Kupp was all over the field. And let's remember, Puka Nacua of the Rams, the star wide receiver who burst onto the scene last year out of Princeton, I believe, and was a Pro Bowl player. Puka Nacua left the game like halfway through, like not even halfway through, had a knee injury in that one. The Lions knew that they were going to go to Cooper Kupp, and Kupp dominated the whole game. I think had like 10 receptions, scored a touchdown. So I think based on the Aiden Hutchinson situation with going up against school, with the Bucs maybe not being able to go as deep as they want to, the beauty of week 1 was that Baker Mayfield was dishing the ball out very, very quickly. So I expect that to continue. But I think Chris Godwin is really going to be the guy that has the biggest imprint on this game, because he's going to play in the slot. He's going to move around to different areas. And if the Bucs need to get rid of the ball quickly and they need to buy time, I mean, what was one of the biggest plays in week 1? It was that 3rd and 18 screen to Chris Godwin that he got down the field. So I think Godwin's going to be involved heavily. And Rachaad White as well. I mean, we know what he can do in the screen game. I think if the Lions find some success early getting to Baker Mayfield, I think they're going to rely on that screen game a lot more, because they're almost going to invite Detroit, who will be hungry at that point after getting to Baker once or twice. They're going to be like, all right, here we go again. But no. So I think the screen game to Rachaad White is also going to be very important. But the injury report just came out, Adam. Do you want to read it off for everybody?
Yeah. So the biggest thing, obviously, going with the first ones who did not participate: Luke Goedeke with a concussion, Josh Hayes with an ankle, Kancey with a calf. We learned today that it wasn't the same calf it was his rookie year.
Yeah.
It's his other calf. He didn't participate. Antoine Winfield Jr., he's going to be out likely. Tyke Smith with an illness. And then when you look at full participants, Zion McCollum, he's ramping back up, trending the right direction with his concussion. Logan Hall, after being limited yesterday, as a full participant. And then Will Golston and KJ Britt round out the injury report. They were also full participants.
Yeah, so it seems like a little bit of an illness is going around the locker room.
Yeah,
because KJ Britt had it earlier in the week. He was able to practice. But Tyke Smith, the Bucs cannot afford another...
No.
I don't want to say injury, because illness isn't necessarily an injury. But the Bucs cannot afford to have another player unavailable in the secondary. That would be disastrous for a group that's already pretty shorthanded at both cornerback and safety. Tyke Smith was like the one guy that's like,
Yeah.
okay, worst case scenario, we could throw him in a couple of different spots.
And it would only thin out a secondary room even more. I mean, you got guys that are going to be bouncing all over the place. If Izzy he's a free safety this week, you might see looks where Tyke Smith might move back there, and Izzy might go down to nickel, or Tavierre Thomas, he might slot in. But the secondary cannot afford another injury or another guy to be missing out of action when you got to go up against the Lions defense or Lions offense where Amon-Ra St. Brown, he popped off in both games last year. Jameson Williams looks to be more formidable. Yeah, it wouldn't be good.
No, it would not. And you mentioned Tyreek Funderburk a moment ago. I like Pat W saying, "Here, kitty, kitty, you're getting
that's good.
Thunderstruck." Shout out to AC/DC. We spoke to him a little bit today. I just think it's a big ask by the Buccaneers to have a guy. And listen, they don't have any other options, so it's not like they're making this decision on their own where they have a number of players that they can go to. It's a tall task to have a guy that was an undrafted free agent. Yes, he impressed in the OTAs and mini camp and even in training camp, but he missed a lot of the preseason because he was in a walking boot. That seems to be the injury of choice this year for the Bucs. Everybody's in a walking boot. Josh Hayes, Funderburk earlier. Antoine Winfield Jr., of course, as well. I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown didn't even have a good first game. So you can only imagine, like, they're trying to force feed him the ball this time around. I'm curious who that responsibility is going to fall on, because the Bucs don't typically have a corner shadow one player all across the field. Like, they don't really do that with Jamel Dean. They did it occasionally with Carlton Davis at times, but they haven't really done that with Jamel Dean. So St. Brown's going to have some opportunities to go up against Tyke Smith if he plays, and then Funderburk too. Again, just a rookie in his first ever matchup. Adam, did you happen to see the Lions injury report as well? Did that come out yet? He's 0813 was asking.
Let's see. Oh, actually, yeah, right down below. So let's see. Marcus Davenport did not participate. Fetu Melifonwu did not participate. Penei Sewell with an ankle still did not participate. Limited Kirby Joseph, wide receiver Isaiah Williams, and Jameson Williams. And then full participants, Carlton Davis, DJ Reader, and Lauren Strickland. So Penei Sewell, though, not participating. Both right tackles on each team. That's quite a storyline right there.
Yeah, that would be, I would say an eye for an eye, but in this case, an ankle for an ankle. But your thoughts on the Bucs secondary and just trying to, I guess, batten down the hatches against a Lions team that is just ferocious, no pun intended, offensively, especially with those wide receivers.
Yeah, so with Funderburk, you almost wonder if Jamel Dean would mirror St. Brown, because first NFL game going up against St. Brown, it would be a tough task for Funderburk or really anybody. But when you look at the matchup here with the wide receivers, so let's say St. Brown, Dean's able to mirror him at least most of the game. Jameson Williams in his 4.25 speed last week, he had 9 catches for 121 yards. He had 3 catches of 20 yards or greater. So the big play abilities there, which is the last thing you want if you're the Bucs secondary, is to be able to, you're going up against this offense that is just able to pick you apart. You kind of saw that in the playoff game where they generated like these 17, 18-yard passes. If Goff gets in that rhythm, in both games last year, he completed 30 passes. He looked very comfortable. So depending on the status of Penei Sewell, will Todd Bowles blitz more and try to make him uncomfortable early on? You kind of saw it with Jaden Daniels last week. They let him scramble, but Goff not being a scrambler, you might have to send more people to kind of accommodate for the secondary being thinned out.
He's 0813, a Pewter Report YouTube channel member, says Sewell and Davenport missing would almost even out with the Bucs injuries. Jeff the Champ says, watch Carlton Davis stay healthy the whole year and have his most interceptions this season. Well, he dropped one last Sunday night. Now, the other big thing with the injuries for the Bucs, sticking with that secondary, is Zion McCollum. Shout out to the Cream School jerseys. Zion McCollum has upgraded overall with having a non-contact jersey on Wednesday. He had a just regular jersey today on Thursday. So it seems like Zion is trending in the right direction. And I was watching him closely today at practice, at least for the availability that we have, watching the Bucs before they, go into a full practice with figuring out the game plan and the scheme and all these different things. But he seemed to be moving pretty well. He was running in drills with Jamel Dean, and he's been was running with like KJ Britt as well during special teams when the starters that don't play on special teams are kind of just like chilling, doing their own drills, different things like that. We can't guarantee that he's going to be playing, even though he's trending in the right direction. But I think the Bucs can kind of skate by. Like, I'm just waiting for, if Zion's able to play, I'm just waiting for like someone else to get hurt or Zion to get hurt in the game itself. But if he's able to go, then in the secondary, while it does feel like you're kind of putting it together a little paper mache and, with duct tape and things of that nature, it still is pretty much the same starting group with the exception of no Antoine Winfield Jr. and just Christian Izien there instead. And you're getting Logan Hall back. So really, you're kind of just missing Kancey and Antoine Winfield Jr. when there was a moment where we thought, okay, well, they're missing Kancey, Logan Hall. Obviously, Bryce Hall's out for the year. And now you're down to your first string corner, who's the most injury prone out of anybody in the secondary. Yeah. And then your fourth string corner, who has never played a snap in the NFL before. So Zion McCollum, I don't know if he's necessarily like an X factor for this game, but having him return can do wonders for this defense, especially with, all the big names that you mentioned. And I feel like Zion, depending on how the Lions want to draw it up, and, Jameson Williams had some plays over the middle. But if there's anyone that can match his speed, it would be Dean and Zion McCollum as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think it is a different ball game if Zion McCollum is able to go, and it just kind of adds another body back there for the corners, but also somebody that can, like you mentioned, compete and go up against Williams' speed, because Williams was electric. And you saw it last year when he beat Ryan Neal in the end zone, and just his ability to get downfield, McCollum would counteract that. So his status, it's hard to clear concussion protocol so quickly after just suffering it last week. But with him being a full participant today, he's trending in that right direction, and he'd be a huge get. But unexpectedly, with Goedeke also suffering a concussion, you were expecting McCollum maybe not to play, but at least having Goedeke, and now the tables have kind of turned and it's flipped there.
Yeah, it's kind of a would you rather, and I'm curious for everybody in the chat. Feel free to answer this, and I'll put up on the screen. But we were talking about this a little bit earlier at practice today, Adam. If you only had to choose one and the other one had to sit out, would you rather the Bucs had Luke Goedeke for this game, or would you rather the Bucs have Zion McCollum? I think it's a very interesting question, because they're both very important.
Man, I think I would still go with Goedeke just because it's Aiden Hutchinson on the other side. And I feel like with the secondary, with Todd Bowles being able to coach him up and communicate, it's easier to kind of plug and play corners than it is a right tackle. And just relying on Justin School to go up against Aiden Hutchinson. Curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it has to be Luke Goedeke. A lot of people are saying Luke Goedeke as well. Hezo actually says Zion, easy answer. Bat W says Goedeke. Alex Scott says, I'd rather Goedeke for sure. Bigger drop-off, in my opinion.
Or as Ryan says, just say both.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Henry Gigante, a YouTube channel member, says offensive line is more important than defensive backs. I think the reason why I go for Goedeke, partially, yes, what you said is Aiden Hutchinson is a bad mamma jamma, as they say. Like, if this was Washington, I would say maybe you can get by without Luke Goedeke. You might need Zion McCollum a little bit more. But I think the answer is Goedeke, because Aiden Hutchinson is, like we said, a great edge rusher. You're also still trying to build that chemistry and continuity with the offensive line. And I know Goedeke has it with Cody Mauch a lot more because they played together last season. But as an entire unit, they've only had one game together and a handful of snaps, in the preseason. So getting different looks against another team, I think, is really important. And Todd Bowles has been in this situation before with having players in the secondary out, needing to use other people and trying to piece it together. I mean, at the end of the day, if the pass rush can get home against Jared Goff, which I'm not saying that it will, but if they are able to disrupt Jared Goff, give him different looks, force him to get rid of the ball quickly, there is a way that the Bucs defense can keep it a game and maybe even make some plays out of it, regardless if Zion McCollum is in there or Tavier Thomas or whoever it may be. Keenan Isaac, obviously, who the Bucs signed the other day that you spoke to today as well. So I think the answer is Goedeke, just because there's a lot more questions with Justin School trying to start at right tackle than the Bucs finding another defensive back that had plenty of reps with Todd Bowles in that overall defense. So it's a good question, but I think I got to go with Goedeke.
Yeah, and it isn't just Goedeke or School that will have a tough matchup going up against Aiden Hutchinson, but the interior offensive line last week, after going up against Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen, this week they have Aleem McNeil and DJ Reader, who are two run-stuffing defensive tackles. McNeil had 5 sacks in 2023, so the whole offensive line is going to have a tough matchup, and having Goedeke out there, it would be huge. And like you said, in terms of chemistry and the communication, because he's played with Cody Mauch and he's going to have a tough battle. It's going to be really tough for the Bucs on both sides of the ball and at each level on both sides too.
Yeah, that's going to be quite difficult, but I'll tell you, it's always easy picking what energy drink that I want. And of course, that's Celsius Energy Drinks, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. Check out some of their newest flavors, the strawberry sparkling watermelon lemonade and the sparkling kiwi strawberry. It's a great energy drink to have to start your day. Maybe if you want to substitute for coffee or something like that. Really gives you that kickstart to get it going. I know I had the green apple cherry this morning. So they just have all these like crazy flavors that combine together and make for a delicious energy drink. So if you need to know where to find a Celsius energy drink, head on over to the Celsius store locator, punch in your address, and I'll tell you the closest location where you could pick one up. Could be a Walmart, a Stop and Shop, a health and fitness store, a 7-Eleven, a Piggly Wiggly, a King Cullen, a Stop and Shop, a Publix. What else am I missing? That's right, your bodega.
Bodega.
And once you keep going to your bodega and you know you love Celsius and you want more and you want to buy it in bulk, you can buy it in bulk over on Amazon. You can do it with the subscribe and save. You have it sent to your place of residence whenever you want. I'd recommend purchasing the variety pack because there's so many awesome flavors of Celsius. So why not have as many as you can? And variety is the spice of life. So get that variety pack over on Amazon, and you have it sent to your place of residence whenever you want. You're in charge. You're the captain. Just make sure you drink Celsius Energy Drinks, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. Another interesting part of this game, Adam, is the overall belief that the Bucs, shout out to Brandon Riley again, that the Bucs have to kind of win this game in a shootout. Do you see it that way as well, or are we all just kind of expecting the worst type of situation just based off of a couple of injuries?
Yeah, I think when you look at it, Liam Coen mentioned today, they have to be prepared whether it's a shootout or a 14-10 game. But looking at the playoffs last year, the fact that Baker Mayfield had to throw 41 passes, I feel like there's going to be a high volume of passes that Mayfield throws. And it was kind of a high-scoring game last year, 31-23. But I don't really see it needing to be a shootout. It'll be a close game, a battle back and forth. But I don't necessarily see it being a shootout unless the Lions get off to a fast start. And then the Bucs need to kind of match that and really pick up the tempo. How do you see the game going?
Yeah, I'm not saying there's going to be like a fair amount of points scored, but everyone's acting like, I was listening to some radio when I was on the way home, and everyone's acting like the Lions scored an insane amount of points. Like,
yeah,
they scored 27, which is a high amount, but they need to get to overtime to score those 27 points. It wasn't like it was, plays made left and right. Like there was a turnover by each side. If anything, the Lions got lucky at the end. Like they had an interception in the end zone at one point, so that took points off the board for the Rams. And then they had to scramble at the end to go and kick a game-tying field goal. So it wasn't Detroit's best game. They don't look extremely polished, and I also don't think many teams look very polished in week one. If anything, the Bucs were one of the few very polished looking teams after week one, but I think that has to say more about the opponent that they had than necessarily the Bucs executing fully to the best of their abilities. I mean, Liam Coen even said today there was a lot of frustration to himself personally about settling for field goals, especially early in that game. That's kind of crazy to think, like all the field goals that the Bucs settled for, and they still scored 37 points.
Yeah.
Like that's almost insane. So do I think the over could hit in this game, which is 52? Yes, but I don't think it's going to be like Bucs get the ball, score touchdown, Lions get the ball, score touchdown, and you just keep doing that for the rest of the game. Like I don't think both teams are scoring over 30 points in this game. I think one team may. And I also think it's going to be very important for the Bucs to just take the Lions out of their rhythm. Now, Christopher Cole also says Rams defense isn't that good. I mean, yeah, they lost Aaron Donald, and that's like a huge, huge loss. But Jared Verse, their rookie from Florida State, looked pretty good. Brandon Fisk, also from Florida State.
Byron Young.
Young as well. Took over that interior defensive line. So, I don't know. The Rams have some pretty good pieces. I'm not saying their defense is like a top 10 defense in the league, but it's not a pushover the way that Washington was, or how the Giants look bad, or how the Panthers will look even worse now because one of their best defensive tackles, I shouldn't be laughing, is out for the rest of the year. So I think it kind of just comes down to a lot of the individual matchups. And Jacko bluntly says Bucs in a blowout. I don't think it's going to be a blowout one way or another. Again, I'm not saying that one team is going to cover the spread or not. I just think it's going to be a competitive game, two good teams, and I think it's more back and forth than necessarily just, lighting up the scoreboard nonstop.
Yeah, and Matt, with that, I wanted to ask you, like going up against Washington week one, Jane Daniels' first game, you kind of want to face him early on and see him in his first game rather than mid-season. He's in form, in a rhythm, and kind of that dual threat quarterback. With the Lions, though, is it better to face them now than late in the season? Because you mentioned in week one against the Rams, that was a really close game and they weren't necessarily in that offensive rhythm. So is it better to face them, even though it's up in Detroit, face them early in the season as opposed to later on when they may be a well-tuned machine?
Yeah, I 100% think that it's better to play them now. I think across the league, you would rather play the good teams early in the season while they're still working some things out than when they hit their groove. So the thing, though, is some teams, they go through a little bit of a rough patch. We saw that with the Bucs for sure last year, losing 6 of 7. Even the 49ers had a little bit of a down streak when Deebo Samuel was out, and McCaffrey was out, or another one of their really good players was injured for a little bit. And they had a bit of a losing streak where they lost to the Browns and the Vikings and, teams they should have beat. But all things considered, everybody's healthy, which I know that's not the case right now. But when everybody's healthy, I think you want to play the Lions earlier in the season, especially to see how they can get pressure in that game.
Yeah.
Because with Sewell, I think it's almost very even. If Sewell's not in and Goedeke's not in, well, then you're pretty much saying Yaya Diaby versus Aiden Hutchinson. And while I'd probably still give the nod to Aiden Hutchinson, Yaya Diaby had a pretty good first game. He generated a lot of pressure, but just wasn't able to get after Jaden Daniels because Jaden Daniels is fantastic when it comes to running and scrambling and just having that overall speed. So I think Yaya going up against Jared Goff, who can move but is not considered a mobile quarterback. That's the one thing we didn't see a ton. Kalijah Kancey was really the only guy that could get after Jared Goff. The Bucs weren't able to pressure Jared Goff enough in either game. So I kind of hope the Bucs go all or nothing because Goff had plenty of time to sit around and find the open guy. They didn't make him run for his life the way that you would want to see. So I think the Bucs should start out with Yaya, see how much they can really get after Jared Goff. But if not, don't be afraid to send the house because it's going to force Goff to go deep. I like Christian Izzian's hustle and speed to kind of stay with someone like Jameson Williams if they go deep, and you can handle a lot of stuff underneath. But yeah, I think Yaya might be the biggest component to the Bucs winning the game and the defense getting a couple of stops. And the guy next to him, Kancey, we have a super chat from Ryan Giles. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
This $1.99 super chat who says, was Kancey on the practice field today? Adam, you want to answer that?
Yeah, so in the portion that we saw when Matt and I went out there, he wasn't. Apparently, right before we came out there, he was on the field briefly, but we didn't see him during warm-ups or during the individual stretches, and then he was ruled as not participating today. So to answer your question, Ryan, very briefly, but we didn't see him, no.
Yeah, and he wasn't in pads either, as Bat W said. Now, we mentioned it briefly before, but I think this deserves a little bit of an expanded conversation. So, Todd Bowles was asked earlier in the week about the calf injury to Kancey, if it was the same one as last year, and he said yes, but I think you got to read the body language and how he responded. I don't think Todd Bowles knew specifically, and I'm not blaming Todd Bowles about this because, he's got over 53 players, including the practice squad, on his roster. It's like Todd Bowles isn't going to be the one.
He's not the team trainer.
Yeah, he's not the team trainer. He's not the team physician and all these things. So he does relay that injury information because it's part of the NFL bylines and things like that. But I don't expect Todd Bowles to know all these specifics of every single injury. So when Todd Bowles answered about if it's the same calf injury, I think his answer actually might have been, I think so. But that it wasn't a definitive, like, yes, absolutely. Go to your local website or newspapers or whatever conglomerate you work for and report that. But the news did come out. Shout out to Jenna Lane for getting to the bottom of this. The news did come out that it was the other calf of Kancey that is the injury for him and forced him to miss the first game of the season. I don't know if that's more of a concern or less of a concern.
I was going to say the same.
That it's another calf injury for Kancey. But the fact that it's the other calf kind of makes me think that it's not necessarily like an injury history type of thing because he didn't have an injury history over at Pittsburgh. I think it's more of playing in Tampa and kind of dealing with the heat and the humidity and just really like proper hydration because it's so weird that 2 years in a row he has the same exact injury, but it's the other leg.
Yeah, and you kind of debate whether it's good news, whether it's a different calf or the same calf. If it was the same, you're kind of concerned if that's going to be the case throughout his career and he's just going to be injury prone with that kind of being like that ligament, that area of his body just not being up to par. But the fact that it's the other calf, you wonder if it's more of like a training issue or, as you mentioned, hydration. A lot of players in the Tampa Heat in the summertime, the hamstring's a big deal. So you're kind of hoping that the calf over time that kind of goes away. But it's interesting to know that it is the other calf as opposed to being the same.
And I think what's just frustrating is, Kancey played in a lot of games last year. It wasn't like he had no experience as a rookie. I mean, let's remember he was the defensive rookie of the year in either November or December. So he had his impact. His presence was felt last season for the Bucs. But there's something about just coming out of the gates hot, something about putting everything together after finally playing in a full training camp and a full preseason. And, seeing the culmination of him and Vita Vea together, wreaking havoc along that interior defensive line. Whenever he's back, it'll still be great to see Vita and Kancey together. But there's just something about not having him from the start at the get-go, it's almost like he has to play catch-up once again, which he did last year.
Yeah.
He was able to get caught up, but do you want to keep doing that over and over and over, year in and year out, especially for a guy that is only in his second season and is still trying to develop as a defensive tackle? And I think he's a pretty good defensive tackle already, despite some of the time that he missed. I just hope it doesn't affect his development too much, because he's obviously such an important piece to this Buccaneers team. But I mean, even fast forward to next season, and not that we're going to spend much time on it, but I mean, that's got to be something in the back of everybody's head. Is like, can Kancey be ready for the start of the season? Because it's already been 2 years and we haven't been able to watch it.
Yeah, and you mentioned like a key component being Yaya Diaby this week, but a big component for the Bucs defense going into the season was supposed to be the duo of Vita Vea and Kancey. And with Vita losing that weight, and the hope was that he would take more double teams and that Kalijah would be able to develop further as a pass rusher and to kind of see those improvements on the field in his second season. Can he form that duo with Vita? Can he be that pass rushing threat alongside Yaya? And the fact that you're delaying that again after a rookie year in which he came back after missing the first 5 weeks pretty much, and he was able to do so well for a defensive tackle. It's hard at that position to hit the ground running. He did it once, but to expect him to do it year in and year out, that's really tough, especially when guys are already starting to get into in-season form. And a guy like Kancey, he's just getting back out on the field for the first time.
Well, some people that always show up, of course, are our fantastic Pewter Platinum members. And of course, as we do on every single show, we want to give a specific shout out to you, our Pewter Platinum members. So shout out to Scott Federico, Guru, Scotty J, Rathel Gordon, and Noah Parr. We appreciate all your support of Pewter Report and being a Pewter Report YouTube channel member. So we appreciate all of you, and get ready for tomorrow's Pewter Insider. That'll be for Pewter Platinum members and Pewter Premier members as well. The Pewter Insider is a live Q&A that we do every single Friday with this exclusive group of Pewter Report YouTube channel members. And we'll be talking about how the banged up Bucs can beat the Lions. We'll have some inside info that we haven't revealed on the Pewter Report podcast this week. And of course, we'll answer any questions that you have on this live and exclusive show. Make sure you set your notifications, because we will be going live at 1:30. So we hope that you guys can join us live. But if not, don't worry, because it will be archived and you can see it on our YouTube channel, Pewter Report TV. And if you have a question and you know you're not going to be live for the show, that's okay too. You can just put it in our chat on our YouTube page, our YouTube channel, and we will answer it. And then you can listen to it on the show. So that's coming up on Friday. Of course, coming up on Sunday, we will have the Pewter pregame show, which will start at 9 o'clock. That'll be myself and Scott Reynolds. We'll pregame with the Pewter pregame. And we'll talk about specific matchups, the biggest matchups to watch between the Bucs and the Lions on offense and defense for each side. And that'll start at 9. So the cool thing, too, is obviously we'd love for you to be there live. If you can make it, fantastic. But if not, that'll still be on our YouTube channel member. So if you're busy in the morning and you're not able to get home until, noon or whatever, it'll still be there. It'll be there on our channel. The game's at 1 o'clock, so I recommend trying to watch it before the game starts at 1 o'clock. But it'll be about half an hour, 45 minutes. So plenty of in-game coverage there. And, of course, the Pewter Game Day show comes up at 1 o'clock. Myself and Josh Capa, we had an absolute blast doing it last week, especially with the Bucs winning in the fashion that they did. And thanks to M, who says, great show. Love these. Yeah, looking forward to seeing you there as well. But yeah, I give some of my insight from being in the locker room during the week. Josh is great with, watching the tape and talking about the X's and O's of a lot of things. We get very interactive with the Pewter people in the comments. And of course, we give our live reactions to everything that's happening, the good, bad, and the great. I know some people like to say ugly, but I'm going to say great instead, because we're going to think positive. So that starts at 1 o'clock. We'll probably start at like 12:55, let everybody get into the chat as we get it going. And we'll have WDAE's Aaron Jacobson joining us at halftime to get his thoughts. And Tom Krasnicki, a.k.a. T. Kraz, will join us late in the third quarter, maybe the early fourth quarter for the show. So a lot of big things coming up on deck for PewterReport.com and the Pewter Game Day show. Let's get to the super chat from Easy the Great. Thank you, Easy, for the $2 super chat, who says, Malk has to play better. He's overpowered too much. I don't want to jump ship on Cody Malk. He had one very bad pass blocking rep where Deron Payne beat him like a drum, got immediately into the backfield. Luckily, Baker Mayfield did what he did and escaped the pocket and avoided many defenders.
Yeah.
But Malk, his athleticism is big. I thought he was good in the screen game. There are a couple things that need to be fixed and some fundamentals that need to be ironed out a little bit more. So there's no question he has to play better, but I don't think in the long run he's necessarily going to be overpowered or anything like that. I just think, with the lineman, one or two bad reps gets maximized 100 times versus a receiver that drops a ball or something like that. So I'm not too worried about Cody Malk, but what do you think, Adam?
I'm not yet either. The first game of the second season, there's still plenty of time for him to improve off of his rookie year. And after struggling a bit his rookie year, he put on some weight this offseason. And so you point at one or two bad reps, and obviously you don't want to point at offensive linemen by name because that's when they're doing something wrong, either a penalty or a misassignment or just completely getting pushed back. But with Cody Malk, I feel like he's trending in the right direction. And you kind of saw this offseason. He's taking steps to be better in this offense. Everything's not going to click right away. Even though 37 points they put up, it was an incredible total, and they want to be one of the best offenses. It's about the process and not the results, as Liam Coen said. And there's still things to clean up. And Cody Malk, he's just one of those guys that has to clean his game up and be better. But you like his athleticism, and Coen talked about it this week, and Baker talked about just the fact that between him and Graham Barton, just having two athletic offensive linemen, there's a lot of good in that too. And so it's going to take some time to gel and play better together, but I wouldn't be worried on Cody just yet.
Yeah, I almost think it's better that we're talking a little bit about Cody Malk, but we're not discussing Ben Bredesen at all.
Yeah,
that's always the best news for an offensive lineman, is that you're not talking about them. Yeah, I have a lot of trust that Cody Malk's going to figure it out. And if we're not talking about Ben Bredesen, that's a plus for the Bucs. I just want to give a shout out to M, who says, great show. Love these. Talking about the Pewter Game Day show and the pregame show. As Henry Gigante also says, pregame show and the game day show are a must watch. So appreciate the kind words there. Adam, you mentioned Liam Coen a moment ago. We did speak to him today. What were your kind of biggest takeaways from discussing and chatting with Liam Coen this afternoon?
Yeah, so I already kind of briefly mentioned that Liam Coen, every week, he kind of expects to be one of the best offenses in the NFL. That was a key takeaway, and just that he wasn't satisfied with 37 points. I mean, there was a series where there was 2 holding calls. There was 3 times when they settled for a field goal. One of them was a 56-yarder. But the other 2 were closer, and they were in the red zone. They had a chance, but it came down to execution. And so he wasn't satisfied with that, which is encouraging. And then also the fact that him and Todd Bowles, they're talking on the sideline, and he's getting plenty of insight. He called Todd Bowles kind of like a great tool in his toolbox to be able to kind of bounce things off of him. If he wants to go with a run call, and he's like, hey, Todd, what would you do in this situation? Would you blitz, or what call would you run? So the fact that he's able to talk to Todd Bowles, and they're already communicating pretty well, it seems like Cohen's a better fit in this year as a play caller than Canales was last year. I mean, it might be obvious to some Bucs fans who weren't too pleased with Canales, but just the fact that Cohen's able to communicate with Todd Bowles and his offense, it already looks to be improved and has more depth to it than Canales's did last year. I think those were kind of big takeaways, not just on Sunday, but listening to him talk today.
Yeah, that was some fun insight, just kind of hearing him discuss like picking the brain of Todd Bowles, trying to predict what the defense said. I actually have the exact quote pulled up here. Coen says, I kind of asked him, talking about Bowles, I kind of asked him what he'd almost be thinking in some instances. Like, do you think they will go cover zero on me here? Would you be cover zero here in some ways? We had some good dialogue. I bounced some things off of him in those moments. Maybe I tell him what we're running. Hey, we've got a run here. Or I'm thinking, is it a possible 4-down situation? Or, hey, can I get a run off here if we're going to have 4 downs to go for it? He just provides great insight. You might as well use him as a tool. Yeah, I mean, Todd Bowles is one of the best defensive minds, and he is the head coach. So, obviously, they got the communication there. And then he was also asked about Bowles helping him accelerate his experience as a play caller, because he did do it a ton, obviously at Kentucky, but not as much with the Rams. And he says, yeah, I would say absolutely. He's somebody to learn from, and that can, in a great way, kind of push you towards maybe an answer. Go with your gut or whatever it is. Hey, think about this. He's just got great insight into the game. I'm going to lean on him as much as possible. I also think one of the big takeaways from Liam Coen kind of goes back to that Rams-Lions game on Sunday night. Obviously, Coen has a lot of familiarity with the Rams, having been in that organization. And so I asked him about, like, could he take away a lot of stuff from how the Rams went up against the Lions? And he really said not so much, because of the way that the Lions were playing defense. He said not a lot. They played them in a base defense the entire game, except for on known passing situations and 3rd down. That's something that we had to prepare for, obviously, where they just said, hey, we're going to try to make you one-dimensional. We're going to put base defense on the grass, and you're going to throw it every snap. That's something that we have to plan for, have to have a plan for. That was something that you wished you could have gotten more. You wished they would have played the game in nickel. Then Sean McVay would have been able to do some more that we would have been able to take from in that game. Essentially, they just said, hey, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to dictate the terms of the game. That was a little frustrating. So, yeah, I thought that was quite interesting in the sense that the Lions didn't give much that the Bucs could really play off of. So they may get a lot of different looks in week 2 that were not on the screen in week 1. Now, the Bucs do, and of course the Lions do as well. Both teams had the benefit of playing each other twice last season, so there are probably some looks that maybe they didn't show on Sunday night, but you can look at the playoff game last year, the game in Tampa last year, and try to pick things up. But of course, there is that little spin, because Liam Coen wasn't the offensive coordinator last year, and he is the offensive coordinator this year. And the cool thing about him being the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is that there is a chance that he could end up on the Bucs cruise.
We're on the Bucs cruise. Of course we're playing pool volleyball.
Hey, we on the Bucs cruise, of course. Anytime I say Tampa, they will say Bay. Tampa! Hey! Tampa! Hey! Tampa! Hey!
We're on the Bucs cruise. Of course, I've got my Super Bowl 37 hardware. What do you think?
We're on the Bucs cruise, and of course we had a pirate night. Arr! Arr!
That's right. Looks like a great time. So join the fun with hundreds of Bucs fans on the 3rd annual Tampa Bay Bucs cruise, which sets sail March 7th through the 10th in 2025 on the beautiful Celebrity Silhouette ship. This is a 3-night cruise that begins in Fort Lauderdale and visits Key West and Bimini in the Bahamas. Last year's cruise had Rashad White, Luke Goedeke, Kate Otten, Greg Gaines, Christian Izzian, Jamel Dean. Also had Super Bowl 37 MVP Dexter Jackson, Hall of Famer Warren Sapp, the voice of the Bucs, Gene Deckerhoff, and many others. Already Set to go for this year, confirmed for the Bucs cruise, is Yaya Diaby, who's been on before, and Jordan Whitehead. There's also going to be a special guest appearance by Derek Brooks. There will be photo and autograph opportunities with the players, also a raise the flag sail away party, VIP parties that includes players, interviews with them as well, and of course my favorite, a water volleyball challenge, along with trivia contests, fun games, and a lot more. Reserve your cabin now on the 2025 Tampa Bay Bucs cruise, where drinks, including alcohol, Wi-Fi, and tips, are all included with a $200 deposit per person. So to reserve this cabin, go to TampaBayBucsCruise.com or give them a call at 1-800-975-7112. That's TampaBayBucsCruise.com, excuse me, and 1-800-975-7112. This next player we're going to talk about will actually have to wait because we have a super chat, and you know our rule. If you super chat us, we will get to your comment ASAP. So thank you to Meets McGee with this $5 super chat, who says, this will need to be a shootout. Plus, they need to defend the middle of the field. That is where Goff did most of his work, plus not having 45 and Neal. Well, a big thing that we haven't even talked about, Adam, is as far as defending and pass coverage in that middle of the field, I think we're going to see a lot of Servassier Dennis in Sunday's game, kind of becoming that third down linebacker, more in pass coverage, can do a lot of things, obviously had a sack. And let's remember, it's not Ryan Neal back there, it's Jordan Whitehead. And while you want Antoine Winfield Jr. back there, I think the Bucs are more equipped, I'm not going to say better, but more equipped to get by with the duo of Jordan Whitehead and Christian Izien than they would be with Antoine Winfield Jr.
That's saying something. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, your thoughts?
Yeah. I agree that with your point, Matt. With Meets McGee, thank you for the super chat. I don't think it needs to be a shootout. I think the Bucs are better equipped on the defensive side of the ball, as you mentioned, with Izien and Whitehead being back there. I'm really curious, though, like you mentioned, Servassier Dennis, if he plays more snaps than KJ Britt in this one, just based on the fact of pass coverage and him being so strong in coverage, protecting that middle of the field. When you have Sam Laporta, last year, Levante David, in the first matchup, he really shut down Sam Laporta, but adding another year on Levante and Laporta just kind of emerging as one of the best tight ends in the NFL, it can't just be on him. Servassier Dennis needs to be out there, and that's not to mention Jahmyr Gibbs, kind of being that receiving back on a wheel route or just a screenplay. He's very fast too. So being able to compete with all of them, if it becomes a shootout, though, I think the Bucs are better equipped on the offensive side of the ball than they were last year, but I don't know if it needs to be a shootout.
As far as Dennis and KJ Britt go, I think each week we're going to see a complete difference in the amount of snaps that each of them has. And it's solely just going to be based on the matchup. So like this week, we'll probably see more of Servassier Dennis, in my opinion. Next week against Denver, it could be a lot more of KJ Britt. It just depends on the matchup week in and week out. Thanks to Ryan Giles for this $1.99 super chat. Thoughts on the use of more NFL replay system? It slows the game down a ton. It's important to get the right call, but that's why the coaches have challenges. What I will say is I think it's so stupid when under 2 minutes, when the refs have to go to review and they made a mistake on a call and then they change the mistake, but then they have to either force a team to call a timeout or run 10 seconds off the clock. It's like,
yeah,
why are they getting penalized for your mistake? That never made much sense to me. I think there's enough replay. I don't know how much more we need of it. I mean, anything under 2 minutes is reviewed. So I don't know. I think I'm happy with the amount of replay that there is. I don't think we need that much more.
Yeah, and especially in terms of how long the game already is, extending that and using more replay, I want to be a fan of that. And your point with the 10-second runoff, not a fan of that at all. And if the refs don't get the right call, like you said, why should a team be penalized for that?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. There's a lot of things the NFL does, despite being $1 billion corporation, that just does not make sense to me. Thanks to Meets McGee for this $5 super chat, who says, I love our run defense versus anyone, but Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to eat all day. Just limit them to field goals. We have a chance. Yeah, I do kind of think that the Bucs have to play a little bit of bend but don't break. If Amon-Ra wants to get all those yards, fine, but just don't let them score touchdowns. I think it's scary that he didn't have a big game in week 1, because I think he's going to be a big-time target for the Lions in week 2 as they want to get him going. So I'd be very worried about Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah, and with Amon-Ra, Matt, I want to ask you, would you play more off coverage with him, kind of like they did, like 8 to 10 yards off, or just press him and use Jamel Dean or the nickel corner? I
think if you want to blitz Jared Goff a ton, sure, I'm down for it. The Bucs got to not be afraid to allow the big play down the field. You obviously don't want to allow it, but you saw that with the Rams. Like, they would bring the house, or they would, bring pressure. And yeah, they hit the one with Jameson Williams, but it didn't kill them, because it helped them a lot more, not the touchdown, obviously, but it helped them with getting to Jared Goff and throwing him off, off his target several times in that game. So I think that's more important than worrying about getting beat deep one time. Because if you believe in your offense the way that many of us believe in that offense, the Bucs should be able to come back from a 7-0 deficit, in my opinion. And if you want to get more of our opinions, whether it's the Pewter Report podcast, whether it's some things that we wrote on pewterreport.com, head on over to Autograph. We've been asked a lot about doing a Pewter Report app, and we don't need to do one because we have great partners in Autograph. It's kind of like having a Pewter Report app, but you can do it for a bunch of different sports and all of your favorite teams. Autograph, it's what you already do as a fan. It's reading blogs, listening to podcasts, watching breakdowns, and it's all in one place, and it earns you rewards for every act of fandom that you do. This is actually co-founded by former Bucs quarterback Tom Brady. It's a completely free app and available on Android and iOS that currently features the NFL, NBA, WNBA, MLB, fantasy football, and NCAA sports. So if you're a fan of teams in some of those other sports, you can find them all on Autograph as well. There's more sports coming on the horizon. So read Pewter Report News, watch Pewter Report News, and other Bucs websites as well, and get rewarded in one free app over at Autograph. Use the promo code Pewter, that's PEWTER, to sign up. One more time, that's Pewter, PEWTER. All right, as we wrap up the show, we didn't get to do this too much, but you guys super chatted us, so we're fine with that. But wanted to give a quick shout out to Kyle Brandt, who went on quite the diatribe about, without question, the greatest offensive player in Tampa Bay Buccaneers history in Mike Evans. But he went as far as to say that Evans is the greatest Buccaneer of all time in Bucs history. Those are very, very bold words. I think it makes for a great discussion, and his argument, you can see it on Good Morning Football. We have an article about it as well, and Scott Reynolds did a Pewter Pulse on it. I think it's a great discussion because there's so many different ways to look at it. But Adam, real quick, just give us your thoughts on it.
Yeah, Matt, I didn't think we'd get to this one. I was really excited to talk about this with you. So it was a great rant. It was a great story by you. When it comes to Mike Evans, I think he very much has an argument to be the greatest Buccaneer of all time. And I would probably say that he is. I mean, when you look at his ability to be successful with so many different quarterbacks throughout his career, 4 head coaches, 6 offensive coordinators, 7 different quarterbacks, the fact that he was able to still ball out no matter what, I think that speaks volumes about him and just his overall dominance in the NFL. When you look at the 2002 Bucs defense, there was 4 Hall of Famers on there, potentially another one in Simeon Rice. They were dominant. They were probably the most dominant defense in the modern era of the NFL that we may ever see again, with the NFL trending upward and just being so high scoring. When you look at Mike Evans and his ability, you saw it last week, 2 touchdowns. They weren't easy ones either. He's approaching 100 touchdowns receiving. Definitely the greatest offensive player, the most underrated player in Bucs history. And I would say he has the argument to be the greatest Buccaneer of all time. Obviously, respect to the 2002 defense, Leroy Selman back in the creamsicle days, But man, Mike Evans, and he's still doing it at 31. He very much can do it for another 4 or 5 seasons.
Right, like his career's still ongoing, so I think that's the fun part of it. There's a case to be made for him. There's a case to be made for Derek Brooks. I think it's really between the two of them. Rondé as well, because we're talking about players that spent their whole career with the Bucs, where obviously Sapp and Lynch went to a couple of different places. But I think it's down between Mike and Derek Brooks, and the stats that Mike continues to put up, the fact that he did it with so many different quarterbacks, and now he's, winning with the Bucs and has put on some great playoff performances too. It's a fun conversation to have. So you can check out that story on pewterreport.com. You can also see Scott's Pewter Pulse about it. So if you're not already doing so, please follow us on all of our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram at Pewter Report. And our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV, where we have tons and tons of content. Just a reminder for everybody, tomorrow's the Pewter Insider for those that are Pewter Report Premier and Platinum members. That'll be on at 1:30. We got the Pewter pregame show at 9 o'clock on Sunday. Pewter game day at 1 o'clock when the Bucs play. And we'll have a Pewter post-game show after the Bucs game, a little bit after Todd Bowles and Baker Mayfield speak. So still plenty of coverage coming up for week 2 of Bucs against the Lions, where hopefully the Bucs can start 2-0. That's going to do it for us on today's show. So for Adam Slavon, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching. Have a fantastic weekend, and we will see you on Sunday for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.